Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, 22nd of February. You are here at Neuro at Night. We apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, but we think we've got things arranged here. So to not waste any time, there won't be any slides this evening. If Marvin starts to talk about certain things that can pull up on the internet, if he gives me a website, I'll try and do that, and then Rich will give me the screen. But Marvin, thanks for being with us. Sorry for the headaches. It's all yours.
Okay. Well, I apologize for the technological hassles. What I wanted to do is check first and see kind of who's listening and where are we in this kind of saga about Marvin and photobiomodulation and his, efforts to integrate light therapy and neurofeedback. So, I mean, how many people that are currently listening, is there a way to poll or raise hands about, who's kind of up to speed on my research and what's been happening with photobiomodulation, or how much do I need to kind of start over?
I think most people are fairly looking at who's here. They've seen different presentations on it from you and up on the internet. So I think they got the basics of what it is and what it's doing. We talk about it pretty often on this. I think almost every lunch and learn we discuss it at least once.
Good. So I want to kind of bring folks up to speed on what's been happening with the clinical trial, and what I was trying to do was use my Mac to present the slides, but I think I can do a fairly credible job here. I just want to get to the slides. So what we've been doing for the last 15 odd years is looking at how to use photobiomodulation as a way to enhance outcomes in neurofeedback. And where that took me was the idea that we are, as neurofeedback providers, we are working with the electrical impulses. We are not necessarily making what we would consider to be a tissue level intervention. And so what I started to see was that neurofeedback needed something else to help with the tissue level component of a neurodegenerative process like dementia or Parkinson's or ALS, where there's really tissue damage and degradation, and that there's a kind of infectious or inflammatory process going on. So when I saw that light, especially near-infrared stimulation, could in fact address the inflammatory and the issue of perfusion, cortical perfusion, I started to see that if we use photobiomodulation as a tissue level intervention, then we can use the neurofeedback to address the disrupted connectivity issues, and NeuMind or QEEG driven or any of the neurofeedback approaches can be employed then to their greatest effect, while making sure that the tissue level pathology is being addressed directly. So I can take questions as I'm prattling on. So if somebody has something, I'd like to, have this be more of a dialogue than me kind of sitting in my room talking at my phone.
Well, Marvin, let's just jump into that. That's a really key concept, I think. We talk a lot about, we see a lot of elevated delta is, according to Kniazev and Niedermeyer's, is 90% correlated with inflammation. And we see all these brain maps with elevated delta, and theta is highly correlated with blood perfusion. We see high blood perfusion because we're very impulsive. And a lot of times, the inflammatory process front, it's unknown etiology, and we're like going, well,
Exactly.
we can train the delta down, but you've got to do something about the inflammatory process, right? You've got to take a supplement, some kind of something to oxidative stress, but then you're thinking, well, this photobio seems to be really effective with inflammation. And how much research have we had on that? Is it pretty good?
There's actually a considerable amount of research from the people at Durham University in the UK. That's who I've been working with. Dr. Dougal's partners and my partner now, Paul Chazot, is in the biochemistry department at Durham. And they've done a fair amount of bench science. They've done all the bench science, really, for the 1060 to 1080 nanometer technology that we've been using. So we know that we know that we're going to be able to significantly decrease phosphorylated tau. We're going to significantly decrease A beta 42, which are both neurotoxins and very much involved in the production of amyloid plaque in dementia. We also know that in the cascade of activity in photobiomodulation, one of the things that gets stimulated is the release of what's called heat shock proteins. And those are kind of like the last ditch effort of the cells to protect themselves against death. And so these proteins get released. And what we're seeing in the research that Chazot and his colleagues have done is that the specific heat shock proteins that are associated with a kind of anti-apoptotic activity are significantly increased. Another study was done in 2014 by a woman, Celine Lee, in South Korea, and she took MRSA bacteria and injected it under the skin of the mice, and then she tested to see what would happen when you stimulate that area with the 1060 to 1080 nanometer light as compared to placebo. And what they showed was that every 2 hours they were taking an animal and they were taking the skin and doing an assay of the wound and showing what were the components, the proteins that were being expressed after being exposed to the light for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, up to 12 hours. Well, when they got to 12 hours, the ventromedial endothelial growth factor, the VEGF, of the stimulated mice, the ones that got the light on their cage, was 12 times higher than the placebo mice. And VEGF, Richard, I'm sure you know that it's directly related to all the different kinds of healing processes in the body. So recognizing that photobiomodulation improves the rate of healing as well as decreasing inflammation and increasing cortical perfusion. And the way that it increases perfusion is because it is affecting the flexibility of the endothelial tissue, the blood vessels themselves. So when you get older and you start getting atherosclerotic or you get cortical hypoperfusion, what's happening is that your microcapillaries are getting inflexible. And so the oxygen in the blood can't get through to the furthest reaches of the cortex. So that's what's going on. And when you hit those capillaries, when you hit the cells and the mitochondria in those cells with this frequency of light, you're then increasing the flexibility of the tissue itself, the blood vessel tissue itself, which means you're going to get more blood flow. And that's going to immediately reduce inflammation. Does that hang together?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Well, we're pulsing this 1060 to 1080 nanometer light. We're on top of the fact that that's its frequency. And I think people get confused about that. There's so many frequency things going on here. The light, we're just selecting a frequency of red light, and then we're pulsing that red light at brainwave frequencies, right?
We should probably say that 1060 to 1080 is literally the light wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
And that when we talk about frequency, we're actually talking about the number of times per second that we're turning the light on and off.
Yeah, that's
and
a
that
good
that's
idea.
the pulse rate. So we're turning the light on and off some number of times per second, and the value of turning it off some number of times per second is an important question. And these days, 40 times a second has been shown to be pretty useful in temporarily reducing beta amyloid in the brain. And that's in the animal model, and they haven't quite gotten to showing it in the human model, but they've shown that beta amyloid can be reduced after an hour of stimulation by up to 50%.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. However, and this is one of the things that, it's a big however, once you stop the light, once you stop that pulse rate, you're back up to wherever you started within about a half hour.
Yeah, it's kind of like photic stimulation in brainwaves. It seeps right back in, right?
So, but over time, like we showed when we did the presentation with Lou at ISNR, we showed that if you stick the V light, for example, on your head and you pulse it at 10 hertz, what you saw on the screen with the avatar software was that there was this very clear propagation of alpha 10 hertz activity across the entire cortex. And as soon as we turned the light off, there was a slow attenuation of the global, expression of alpha. So it wasn't instantaneous, but it did attenuate over time. Now, would that happen more slowly if you were continuing to do the stimulation? Maybe. If you made the central nervous system more efficient by doing neurofeedback so that the system could tolerate these kinds of inputs and make good use of them, well, then maybe it would stay even longer. And if you didn't have an underlying inflammatory disease and you did something about that with whatever, then maybe you could actually reverse the process of degradation and actually get people to start improving.
Right. The really exciting thing sounds like that you could possibly reduce inflammation with 40 cycle per second pulses, right?
Yes.
I mean,
and
that's really big.
What we're interesting, and we've got, so one of the things that if people go to the Quiet Mind site, which is quietmindfdn.org, if you go to the site and click on equipment, what you'll see is a couple of different devices. And the one device is the V-Light. The other device is a photobiomodulation helmet that we're now working with a company in China to manufacture and provide this device, which has a keypad which allows you to dial in the pulse rate, the on and off times per second rate, from 1 to 20,000 hertz. Now, I have no idea why you'd want to do 20,000 hertz. I don't care. I know that what I wanted and what they're giving me is an increasingly differentiated capacity to pulse the light at different parts of the head at different rates. So what we want to accomplish now is that we can put the helmet on somebody, we can control the intensity, the actual power output of the light, so we don't overwhelm people. We can also control the number of times per second the light is pulsing. So, Richard, if you were to find that somebody had a real deficit at 18 hertz, right, or 18 to 20, you would really be able to dial in 18, 19, 20, 21, or 17 to 20. You could dial in those frequencies and actually stimulate an entrainment response using the light alone while somebody was doing neurofeedback.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a boost, like we were doing with Photic, but maybe a little stronger because it's directly through the scalp and going directly at the cells, the neurons.
And it's
Marvin,
targeted.
Are you on your computer? Are you on your computer?
I could be.
Well, no, I've got your website up, so I'm just pointing to people where it says cranial infrared photobiolation helmet. So I've got your website up, and if you want me to go to something specific, then just let me know.
Equipment.
I'm under equipment. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And now I'll go there too. And equipment. Yeah. So there, it's that first one, the one that says transcranial infrared. So just click on that. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we scroll down, we can see that the settings, the stimulation can be set for up to 30 minutes. You can pulse the frequency from 1 to 20,000, and you can control the power output so that you can have pulsated light, or if at 100% of the power, you can then get continuous stimulation. And there's a difference between pulsed and continuous. And so that's why V-Light came out with the X Plus to put on your vagus nerve or thymus or other places to get continuous stimulation, because that has a more beneficial effect, according to some people, than pulsed stimulation when you're talking about endocrine functions. I'll leave that as an open question at the moment. But the point is to have that capability so that depending on what somebody needs, you can use this tool to deliver whatever it is that they actually need. Does that hang together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So the helmet is it's really well made, and I'm impressed with the quality of the manufacturing. And what they've been willing to do is kind of take me and my ideas, and they're going to incorporate them into their R&D development cycle for new product development. So one of the things that I want to have them do in a future version of this device is to allow for different quadrants of the LEDs, which are, you can see inside, it covers almost the entire inside of the helmet. So
I've got
about
that photograph up now so they can see inside.
Great. And you can see that little keypad there. It's very simple. You just click on it, just tap on it, and you can get everything that you want set up in about 10 seconds, and then off you go. And there's little sponge pads that you can set into the inside, the white plastic. You can set these sponges so that you can custom fit it to anybody's head, and you're not creating a lot of hassle and a lot of jiggling. It's very well, it's well positioned on the head. The other thing is that for people who have subcortical problems, you can slide the helmet back down to the base of your skull and get stimulation directly into the lower part of the brainstem, which is really important for some of the neurodegenerative conditions. And then on the other end, you can slide the whole thing down in front of your face so that you can stimulate through your eyes and you can stimulate your skin. And for those people who have skin conditions, or better known as wrinkles, you can use these frequencies of light to stimulate the production of elastin in the skin, and it'll get rid of wrinkles.
Well, now you're really selling something people want.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, our lines are open now.
Yeah.
So, I do have a question for you about this while you're talking about some of the features, Marvin.
Yeah.
I have a woman I just started to work with today, and she told me she had restless leg, but when you hook her up, I mean, this woman cannot sit still, so she has more than just nighttime restless legs. She cannot sit still. And I'm wondering if something like this could be useful in helping treat that condition.
RLS has been pretty responsive to a number of things that we've used over the years. One of which is lens or HPN. So anybody who's an HPN or lens user, we've done frontal treatments of 1 to 3 seconds across FP1, FPZ, and FP2, and people's legs stop shaking like on the spot. So that's it's kind of cool. Now the other thing is that was with somebody who was in very good physical shape. So I knew that there wasn't something happening at the base of her spine and in her pelvis. So one of the things for people who've got those kind of, motor discontinuity, one of the things you probably want to do is some kind of graduated system of traction, of lower extremity traction, and helping them to release the chronic tension in their pelvis and in their legs. There's a thing called injury release technique that's from chiropractic, and it's something that we all should be aware of how to do it. It's very simple. It's a kind of applied kinesiology thing, but you should look it up. It's called injury release technique from a guy named Walsh, I think.
I will do that.
But yeah, it's a really useful technique, and you can use it for kind of clearing the body memory of early trauma and early injuries, physical injuries and emotional injuries, I guess, what's the difference? But you can use that. You can use those kind of techniques, which is in the realm of like what tapping would do or all of that kind of stuff. But it's a very straightforward, using the base of the skull and lifting the base of the skull, the tissue around the base of the skull very gently while you're touching with the other hand, or while you're having the patient touch wherever the spot was that actually was the location of the injury. And that can really help with, and you can test with applied kinesiology to see whether it's cleared or not. That can be really useful.
Would photomodulation be at all helpful in a situation with someone who has that kind of condition?
I would certainly try it, but I would certainly want to look at like what's the frequency of the tremor. Because one of the things we can start to look at, like with Parkinson's and any of these motor discontinuity conditions, is the idea of disrupting the pattern at a neurological level. So, for instance, with Parkinson's, you can get an app for your phone called Track My Tremor. And you could use Track My Tremor with this patient and just turn on the app and put the phone on her leg. And it will give you the exact frequency of the tremor.
Wow.
You can then use TDCS or TACS. I use TACS to then, and I set up the protocol at 0.5 hertz below and 0.5 hertz above whatever the tremor frequency was, and just run the TACS through the distal, both sides of the limb, right? So you can just do that and get a reduction in the tremor because you're breaking up the habitual pattern. And I've done this with putting on the proximal and distal part of the wrist when somebody's got a handshake, and within a little while your hand stops shaking.
Wow.
Now, would that continue? Would you get a learning effect from that? Maybe, if you then combine that with the motor neuron pathway biofeedback that what's his face with the cowboy hat developed. Richard, who was that? Bernie Brucker.
Yeah. That
right.
Was fast.
So, well, I'm on a roll here. But Bernie developed the motor neuron pathway biofeedback technique that really helped people who lost, access to their arms and it all curled up. he got people uncurling their arms completely in like 6 sessions. So if you combine the motor neuron pathway training with the TACS, you can probably get some pretty good results with people without having to, shoot them up with a bunch of stuff like Cinemet, which has its own problems. So anyway, the light stimulation can serve the same kind of entrainment function as the TACS and TDCS. In addition, the light, the photons, are actually delivering extra energy into the body. So instead of it just being an electrical pulse, these are photons that are carrying packets of energy that then get delivered to the mitochondria and increase the output of ATP. So you get an extra boost from that. Anyway, you got the idea? Now,
yeah.
the cognito light, if we go back up one and go over to the cognito light.
Yep, give me a minute here.
How much time do I have? 20 minutes? 10 minutes.
Got 20 minutes. Yep, it's up. I got it up now.
Okay. All right. So
is this the one you put in my head 2 years ago when I was in Pennsylvania?
Correct.
Okay.
This is the updated version of what I stuck on your head. So
gotcha.
what you can see is that there's an arrays of LEDs that are packaged together, and then there's 2 smaller ones in the front and 1 smaller one in the back. And so what this is doing is delivering both transcranial and intraocular and the back of your skull. It's hitting light into the base of your skull and through the foraminal notch into the substantia nigra, which we're thinking is really going to be helpful for Parkinson's. So this is the device that we've been using for the study that we've just completed in Texas and in Philadelphia, where the people in Texas had both dementia diagnosis combined with Parkinson's. And there were 60 people in that sample. And there were 40 people in Philly where I was running the trial here with people who just had run-of-the-mill Alzheimer's or something along those lines. We didn't take people with vascular dementia. So people use this at home. Their caregivers delivered the treatment twice a day for 6 minutes for 2 months. And we did QEEGs before, during, halfway, and then at the end of 2 months. So they did somewhere around 60 sessions over 2 months. And what we found, I've got preliminary data from the Texas group because they finished their sample sooner than I did. And so they've written up a paper that's been submitted and is now in review in, I think, aging, disorders and aging, something like that. And it's a pretty good journal. But the thing is, what they showed was a comparison between the treatment group and the placebo group, because this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial. And so we use the ADAS-COG as the neuropsych battery to correlate later on with the QEEG. And that we did that because, I mean, that's what we've been doing in Philadelphia for a long time in terms of doing comprehensive evaluations with people, is to correlate what the QEEG looks like and then show how that corresponds to the different aspects of the ADAS-COG and the neuropsych testing. So one of the things that happened with the mini mental status score, in order to get 0.05 significance on the MMSC, you'd have to increase by 3 points. And the average increase for the treatment group over placebo was 4.8 points. So it was a 45% increase over the course of the 60 days. The clock drawing test was really impressive because I'm assuming people know about that. You draw a clock with the time set at 10 minutes after 11, and you basically give people a piece of paper and a pencil and say, draw that. And the difference in the quality of the drawings was a 75% improvement in the treatment versus placebo. The immediate word recall improvement was close to 70%. The delayed word recall was 25%. The detailed logical memory scores improved 52%. Object recognition was 45.8, almost 46%. And the digit manipulations improved 75%. So all of that's kind of like pretty good. And the thing that I was impressed by was the trails test, trails A and B. The time to completion of the test improved about 53%. So it took about half as long for people to complete the trails A and B after 2 months of treatment with the light. So
those are really impressive outcomes. And
that's where we are. That's where we are now. And that's with no neurofeedback, Richard. That's with no neurofeedback.
Yes, great. They published it, or is it just still being?
It's on the way. It's on the way. It's on the way. And I've broken my blind now for the 40 subjects, and I'm starting to do the QEEG analysis. But I looked at one guy, one of the last subjects that we had, and he went from 19 to 26 on the mini mental status.
Well, when you're looking at the pre-test cues on these groups, are you seeing the typical elevated delta and theta in these groups?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's great. Yeah, it's great that you're seeing that as well. And
absolutely.
So one of the key points for me is that the light therapy, and this makes complete sense from what you were saying before about inflammation and perfusion, the amplitude changes were significantly improved. The connectivity changes were not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it might take longer, you know.
Well, not only will it take longer, but I think it requires a different level of intervention. When you're talking about electrical connectivity, you need a different kind of help to reestablish what normal connectivity is.
Oh, so you're thinking maybe neurofeedback.
That's why neurofeedback. That's why neurofeedback. Because the connectivity intervention is much more of an electrical wiring problem that needs to be fixed and not plumbing.
Right, right. Well, we've got Rob Coben's protocol for multivariate coherence training. That might be something that his work might come into play here a little bit.
Well, Rob and I teamed up.
Oh, you did?
And yeah. Rob and I teamed up a while ago, and what he's offering through his clinic, because he's really interested in the Optavia health coaching and the nutritional component.
Sure.
So what he's offering people is the Optavia nutrition, the neurofeedback, and the V-Light.
That would be a powerful combination based on what we've seen so far. Has he shared with you any of his clinical observations with that combination?
He's very pleased with what he's seeing with his people so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rob's a very careful scientist. He's very good at designing his studies.
Yeah. So he's working. He looked over, and we went over all of the research here, and then started to look at how the V-Light could be incorporated. especially given the fact that we wanted something that could be self-administered and home-based. So the V-Lite, or now the other helmet, the one I was showing you before, would be perfectly reasonable things to consider. And I'm talking to Rob soon. He's getting better. He's getting over COVID now.
Oh my gosh!
And,
sorry to hear that happen.
Yeah.
But you bring up a really important subject.
He got clobbered.
A really important subject, and he might want to use his own technology on himself. We've had
oh, he is. He is definitely.
We've had a Rusty, he's a neurologist here, and he's been presenting summary research on COVID and the QEEG data that's been coming out of that. It's been nice to have a neurologist actually talking to us about QEEG and COVID and reading us the research and going over it. And the main findings again was post-COVID inflammatory process showing up as elevated delta again. So that pattern keeps appearing.
Yeah, Rob, can you go back up to my homepage and then scroll down to the testimonials? The middle of the page, the middle of that first page, second page of testimonials or whatever, first page. Anyway, below the big one that says it feels like a miracle. People get so hyperbolic sometimes. Anyway, can you see that one in the middle?
He's just struggling to find he's just trying to find the testimonials.
Just scroll down. Yeah, from the very home page, where it says Quiet Mind Foundation. Just go from the home page. Just go straight down.
Rob. Go down one more, Rob. Right there. It feels like a miracle. There you go. Right there.
Yeah, go down one more.
One more.
And then it says in the middle. It says thanks for the video on how to reconfigure and train with the V-Lite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got
on it.
Got my second Moderna shot Friday, and the next morning I had an unexpected reaction.
Right.
Fatigue, muscle aches, brain fog. Right. Very unsteady on my feet. And then the protocol quickly resolved everything on Saturday except for the lower legs. Still felt wooden, and this was resolved today. So he just sent me that today.
Well, they were saying, I just saw a study today in the news that was just completed. Had a pretty good N size, and they looked at post-COVID, and they found they're projecting 30% of people who get COVID, and it doesn't have to be severe, even if it's mild or asymptomatic. Post-COVID, they're seeing a 30% rate, regardless of people with these significant inflammation, delta problems, and cognitive issues and low energy, and it's lasting so far up to 9 months.
Yep.
So this is going to be a major issue to tackle, and we have, we've been talking about doing it with neurofeedback and so forth.
Well, don't think about retiring anytime soon, Richard.
Yeah, well, I think we're all going to be very busy because all of the mental health agencies and government agencies are scrambling for solutions. And if any of them catch on to the neurofeedback and to this, and this of course would be very attractive because doctors always love flashing lights and expensive technology, and they'll get very excited about it, especially if you've got a controlled group study on it. So,
and the fact that it's Texas A&M Department of Neurosurgery.
Yes, that's a
and
big.
The chairman of the department, who's a full professor in the medical school in neurosurgery, right? Who's a DOD and an NIH grant reviewer, and it's politically. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the policy.
You need to get him to write some letters to the administration, now that we have one.
Now that we have one. Well, that's it. I mean, that's what we're hoping for.
Well, that could be.
Do we want to take some questions from anybody else who's still on the phone?
Yeah, let's see if anybody has anything. Been yammering away here.
In the 7 minutes we've got left.
Anybody got questions? Pretty quiet out there.
Can they unmute?
Oh yeah, they're all unmuted. They can all talk.
Well, one of the things I'm going to ask you, since we're waiting on questions, is just for folks to know, I've got a helmet, as you know, I ordered from you, and I'm waiting for the Chinese New Year to end so we can get it shipped over here. And
it's on its way.
So I want to know how many different, I mean, this helmet, you have such a range. I mean, you can treat like a multitude of disorders, I would guess.
Yes. And what we're going to do next is a comparison with the new helmet. We can finally do a comparison between 810 and 1060 to 1080. Because I've never been able to do a real comparison because I've never had the same device with both wavelengths. Yeah. So now I do.
Have to use two different devices for that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and that's not okay. I won't do that. So I don't have to now because they made me a 1070 device that works exactly the same way as the 810.
Well, that was very cool that they were willing to listen, because that could benefit them greatly if you're finding.
Well, you know, it always helps when you can send them a slide that starts with, 45% increase in mini mental status scores.
Yeah,
and 75% increase. Yeah, I mean, it's no longer, who the hell is Marvin Berman and who cares what his opinion is. Now it's, I didn't even do this study. I didn't have anything to do with it.
Well, it's important that it's done and that you're out there talking about it and letting people know, because otherwise nobody will know.
Right, and that's the whole idea, is that now we're in a position to be able to provide this kind of technology to people. It's not inexpensive, but it's less than 2 months in assisted living.
Right. Well, the 810 one with that full helmet, that was what, 2,500 was that? Or?
Yeah, 3,000.
3,000. Yeah. So I mean, that's around the price of the Lenio mat that I have, and I got the cheap one, and good Lenio stuff costs around 5,000. So I think that's pretty reasonable, considering what the other technologies are costing. If it, based on the fact that you've got a study that's showing it's that good,
right.
This would be a great way. You see so many kids coming in labeled as ADHD, and I've got the data on this. And the majority of them have elevated delta. They've got an inflammatory process. And when I ran large numbers, and I'm talking like 6, 8, 10,000 people, when I'm running that data from the database, and I'm looking for correlations between attention abilities and memory abilities, the biggest correlations show up in delta, not theta. Theta shows up in impulse control, but delta is really the one that has the higher correlations. And then that makes sense, because the inflammation eats away at the white matter, reduces conduction velocity, and generally causes an inflammatory process there that undermines clearing of glutamate, and it just, I think a lot of these kids have an inflammatory issue, and this would be a great addition for that tough delta stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So have we lulled everybody into a coma, or what happened?
No, they just like to listen here.
They just like to listen. Wow. What was that movie? What was it? It was Peter Sellers, right?
Yes.
I Like to Watch.
Yes. That was called
I think we're probably intimidated by all the technology, Marvin. This is Bree. Hi.
Hi, Bree.
In a nutshell, and I'm sure you've mentioned this, but in a nutshell, what would be the greatest difference? I have a V-Light, as you know, love it. And for anyone who doesn't know this, there was this one person who was getting 0 results with neurofeedback, and after using the V-Light for 6 months, I think his inflammation came down so much that he started to actually really benefit from neurofeedback. So I just wanted to put that out there because
thanks, Bree. No, it's very important. It's very important because the inflammation.
Go ahead.
Richard, you're kind of making my point. We've got to deal with the inflammatory process.
Yeah.
So that people can then can function more efficiently.
Well, I've written a lot about QEEG and inflammation and oxidative stress and published stuff, and we talk about it all the time here and what a bear it is dealing with it. A lot of times, we're trying to use B12 and B6 and so forth to help deal with the inflammation. But it's tough, and a lot of times the kids are breaking their diet or they're getting exposed over again, and you need something a little bit stronger sometimes to push back against the inflammation. And then you see the head trauma, and you see residual inflammation in the head trauma lasting for years.
Yep, absolutely.
Same thing with Lyme, same thing with MS. You've got those white matter hyperintensities all over the brain, and this might be a really good solution with Lyme. I've used the Vilite with some people with Lyme, and it, they say it gives them their brain back. But once the Lyme comes back full tilt, it sets them back, and then they have to use it again. But it's better than you can have your brain some of the time.
Right, better than not having it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Marvin, I'm sure you've mentioned this, but in a nutshell, if you had to sell me the new product, other than taking care of all my wrinkles, thank you, why would I buy it? If I already have a V-Lite, what would be the main reason that I would buy this next device?
I would say that if you want to have a broader impact on the brain by having the stimulation be spread out over the entire cortex, that's one thing. And getting better penetration that way means that you're hitting more mitochondria, which means you're stimulating more ATP production, and that's a good thing. The other part of it is, I think that you can control the pulse rate. So instead of having to buy the Neuro Alpha and the Neuro Gamma with the V-Lite, you can simply buy one device, and you have a far wider range of stimulation potential and capability with this unit than with the other. And the other, being able to get to the base of your skull now and getting into your face and your eyes really is going to make a difference. Though I really do agree that stimulating your blood with the intranasal is going to be very helpful, but you can probably do that with just the intranasal device if you wanted to do that. And there are other intranasal devices out there that can deliver a brighter light. So, I like the V-Lite for all that it can offer and for the price point, but at this point, clinically, I think it's important to have another tool when you want to make specific interventions at a particular point.
It sounds a lot deeper. I know we're out of time, but Richard, how does this compare with what you're putting out? You have a helmet that also has infrared, don't you?
Well, the way it compares is it's out now, and we're still probably at least 2 years before we have our own version of that. At the rate it's going, that could be wrong. It might happen in a year, but I doubt it. Engineers and manufacturers, they move much slower than developers.
And yours,
unbelievable.
Richard, is more like, would you say that the LED lights are just kind of an added component to primarily creating a cap for training neurofeedback, and that maybe Marvin's product is more comprehensive in addressing these deep health matters?
I think Marvin's is more comprehensive, the concept of globally getting at the brain. It would be very helpful, especially if you had a lot of white matter hyperintensities everywhere from Lyme or something. But I think also having the frequency control is going to be very important, because different frequencies will, and we already know, have different effects. And Lou has the ability to adjust frequency. He just hasn't unleashed it on the public, but Marvin may force his hand.
Got it. Good. Okay. Thanks, Marvin. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Oh, good. All right, everybody. And give me a call if you're interested. You know, I really want to work with people and their patients and, you know, be in touch.
All right, Marvin. Thanks so much for visiting us and giving us the latest update.
Okay. Shalom.
All right. Thanks, Marvin. I'll talk to you soon.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Wednesday.